queen you thought you knew. It's for an even richer experience of what we're discussing, and there's a lot more in this book also that really takes it to a deeper level. What I'm telling you is part one of the book. There are 3 parts. So this is really just getting started. So just to review, we discussed how Esther had an advantage over all of the other maidens in the land, not in spite of the fact that she hid her identity, but because she hid her identity. Being somebody that was not so much mysterious, but somebody who didn't have any other national affiliation, at least to Achashverosh, that was something that was very appealing to him. He wanted somebody that would be the next Mother Persia, somebody that could be that could play that role of, so to speak, like the Queen of England, the face of the nation. Someone who doesn't seem to have any particular affiliation to just one group within that nation, but to be the symbol, to be the statue. And that's something that he was very much taken by. So that was something that he loved about Esther. And when we had that insight as to why Esther was so successful, why she was able to be loved by the king, so that gives us a better idea of what exactly her blocks were. When she first comes to Achashverosh, when she first comes to him, hopefully we would think at that moment to ask for mercy for the Jewish people. We see that it's not so simple, because for her to make her request right then and there as a personal favor, that would have gotten her in trouble in the sense that it would have, the jig would have been up, the mask would have been off. She would have shown that she has an affiliation with the Jewish people and that she cares about them more than the rest of the nation. That's not something that looks good in Achashverosh's eyes. Even though he promises her up to half the kingdom, he promises the Esther that he knows up to half the kingdom, not the Esther that would be revealing herself as a Jew at that moment. So Esther has that block. She has that difficulty in just asking for a favor. So what she does, we describe as political martial arts. She wanted to take certain momentum, build it up in a way that Achashverosh really just makes off-the-cuff decisions that would go in her favor and not really get herself into any trouble. We talked about how at first she does get herself into a little trouble. She arouses suspicion, perhaps, between that Achashverosh thinks maybe there's something going on between her and Haman romantically. She all of a sudden starts inviting him to parties too. Maybe concerns about an assassination attempt, something like that. That keeps Haman away. That keeps Achashverosh awake all night. And then Esther's plan is that at the dinner, on at least on the second night, the second party, she makes Haman into the bad guy. The way she gets rid of her problem of showing an affiliation to the Jewish people is she says, listen, I want to be Mother Persia. I want to be a person that is not partial at all to any particular group of Persians. But there's this guy over here, he's trying to get me and my people killed. He's the one that's being sectarian, he's the one that's showing, that old world view of everybody being of a different nationality, of a different nation. You got to get rid of him to save me. So that's Esther's attempt at trying to get things in favor of the Jewish people, at the same time stepping aside that she herself doesn't get herself into trouble. Yes?
How is it that she conveys to him that, look, I don't have any special loyalty to anybody?
So if we took a look at the way she describes it, let's see, where does she actually make this declaration? So she says in chapter 7, verse 3, this is page 1258, if you have a Stone Chumash. Right? So Queen Esther answered and said, if I have won your majesty's favor, and if it pleases the king, let my life be granted to me as my request, and my people as my petition. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, slain, and exterminated. Had we been sold as slaves and servant girls, I would have kept quiet, for the adversary is not worthy of the king's damage. And but then she says, after Achashverosh says, who is it? Verse 6, Esther says, an adversary and an enemy, this wicked Haman. It's him. He's the one that wants to look at things this way. When she poses it in the terms that she does, she couches it in this shocking headline of someone's out to kill the queen. Right? And she makes it like that man is Haman. It takes all of the pressure off, takes all the attention away from the fact that, wait a second, Esther just actually declared who she, what nationality she's from. She's not making a big deal out of it. She's only making a big deal out of it because she thinks she's going to get killed if she doesn't. It's about her own personal safety. So that's what Esther does. And she's trying to make Haman the bad guy. She's trying to build up some momentum to get Achashverosh in the heat of the moment to make a decision that if I want to save my wife, what do I have to do? I have to repeal this decree and I have to kill Haman. Right? That would be how Esther would define success. That the decree is destroyed, Haman's killed, and then everybody lives happily ever after. She's hoping that Achashverosh is going to make a heat of the moment decision with all of that emotional baggage thrown into the mix. The problem is, the more you think about it, the more ridiculous this claim sounds, right? Esther is not actually in danger because until this point no one knows she's Jewish. And second of all, even if everybody did know that she was a Jew, certainly you can make an exception for the queen, you would think. So her life is not really in any danger at all, and it's a danger that she herself introduced. So she's hoping Achashverosh doesn't think about that. The problem is Achashverosh then goes and he decides of all times to actually think about things, he decides to get up and leave and take a walk. That's the last thing Esther wants. Okay, and that's where we left in our last class. And besides having holes in Esther's own argument that Achashverosh himself might be thinking about while he's taking a stroll in the garden, you're now giving Haman himself also, who's a very shrewd politician, he's a smart guy. You're giving him time to think about something also. What does he want to say when Achashverosh walks back into the room? And before we actually get into what he may have said, or what he could have said, I think we want to get into a discussion that we had started last week. Haman first, when he presents his case to Achashverosh about why the Jewish people should be eliminated. So we asked earlier, why is he presenting his argument the way he does? Especially if we assume he's totally fine with lying, right? Why doesn't he say, more horrible crimes? If you take a look in chapter 3, verse 8, that is where Haman makes his claims. We'll just read it again. Then Haman said to King Achashverosh, "There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your realm." They're all over the place. Their laws are different from every other people's. They have different laws and customs. They do not observe even the king's laws. Therefore, it is not befitting for the king to tolerate them. So, there are really 3 points here. We asked last week, what's the point of the first 2, right? But Haman mentions they're all over the place, and they keep their own laws, and they don't keep the king's laws. The only thing that should really offend Achashverosh is they don't keep the king's laws, and even then, I imagine you could have expressed it in much stronger terms. You could have made up lies, blood libels, things like that. So, what exactly is Haman trying to get to?
No, a rebellion.
Any thoughts? A rebellion?
A rebellion, because they're all over the place. They have agents in every other representation, in every other...
like what Paro was afraid of in Egypt.
Yeah, but there they were concentrated in one place. That was easy.
Yeah.
In Goshen, here you have people who all over the place. They won't listen. They have all their own minds, and they won't listen to the king. So it's a perfect rebellion. This place their spies, so now they conveying it to the other nations that, oh guys, see?
It's one thing to have a group that's a bunch of criminals, but to have a group that has a dedicated mission, perhaps, to rebel, to usurp the throne, to do whatever, to create anarchy. That's something that's much more dangerous.
And that seems to be the king's biggest fear, and that's why he had that big feast in the first place to bring everybody together.
Absolutely.
So Haman's really playing on his biggest fear.
Absolutely. I imagine I don't know how the Jews lived back in those days, but I imagine none of this was true. I imagine we did keep our own laws. We have our own set of rules, right? But we're really trying to plan a rebellion in the same way that I don't think we're trying to do that in Canada today. I don't think the Jews in Shushan were doing that. So he's lying. Let me ask you, why do you think the first 2 points are relevant for this whole planting seeds of thoughts of rebellion? So we mentioned the first one, they're all over the place, right? They're scattered. What about number 2? They keep their own laws?
Because they don't respect the king. It's very simple. So they live by their own laws and their...
Rabbi Foreman puts it in a very interesting way. He says, typically throughout the world, how do you define a nation? Well, what are the essential characteristics?
Customs, laws, values.
Okay. Usually something else also.
Language.
So language, culture, that's what we would call, that's butter.
Land.
A land. Right.
Land.
Typically you have a group that's defined by a land. Achashverosh conquered 127 provinces, right? So those are the people that he's worried about having maybe certain affiliations, but when there's a nation that's scattered, doesn't have a land, that has their own laws and their own system, that's particularly dangerous.
Because you can't control them.
Right. These Jewish people have the nerve to think that they're not conquered, that they keep their own laws and their own culture and everything, despite not having a land at all. And that's why Haman particularly thinks these people are dangerous, or at least that's how he presents it to Haman, to Achashverosh. Let me ask you, do you think Haman himself believed this?
No.
No? So what is his agenda? Why does he want us dead if he doesn't believe this?
Well, he goes after, he doesn't want the whole nation, well, he goes after one man, but he figures out a rather damage the whole nation.
Yeah.
That
Precisely.
no his descendants or anybody who might do the vengeance, right? Wipe out everybody in the family.
I wouldn't say quite because he's worried about Mordecai's great-great-grandson or something like that coming up to get him. But if you take a look in chapter 3, verse 6, after Mordecai refuses to bow down, it says, "However, it seemed contemptible to him to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had made known to him the people of Mordecai. So Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the entire kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai." What was this really about? It was about Mordecai, but he didn't want it to seem too petty, which it was.
But why couldn't he have made it about Mordecai? I mean, he had the power. Haman had the power.
Mm-hmm.
It was the law of the land that you had to bow down to Haman. Why couldn't he have just said, look, this guy is breaking the law, he's disrespecting, power, me, whatever. Just get rid of him, because the other Jews were bowing down to him.
He does have the power to, and you see later on in the Megillah, there's a point where he breaks and he decides he's had enough. He builds a gallows well before the day that the war is going to take place.
And he doesn't know that Queen Esther is related to him at this point.
Right. Queen Esther is not even Queen Esther yet at this point. Oh wait, is she? Yeah, she is already Queen Esther at this point. But in any event, he doesn't know about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, you're talking about, and everybody knows that, not that him, you're not just eliminating just, one Jew on the street or whatever in Mordecai. You're eliminating the leader of the whole nation. And you don't know, but this nation, let's say if it is scattered throughout, you don't know, and Haman definitely knows that it's a powerful bargaining nation, because that's how he became a slave to the Mordecai, because he was...
Josh didn't talk about that slave relationship.
Yeah,
we don't know anything about that in the Megillah text.
He knows what he's dealing with. He knows he's dealing with the powerful nation. You just take the leader of the nation away.
I don't know if Mordecai at this point is the leader. Right?
It is a 50%
but I hear
that they will be after you, after that.
The way it is described, though, it's not just out of fear of someone's going to get revenge, somebody's going to assassinate me if I do this. The exact wording of the pasuk is "Vayiviz be'einav l'shloach yad b'Mordecai." It would have been embarrassing in Haman's own eyes to send his hand against Mordecai alone. He has the power to do it. He does. We're not debating that. But if everybody else in the world stands for you, and one guy doesn't, it seems very petty, and you don't want to convey that image to everybody else that you care about this one guy. He does. He's a very petty person, but Haman doesn't want to broadcast that to the world. He has a personal vendetta. He doesn't want it to seem that way. So he says, let me kill the entire people instead.
I have a little problem with that, because, number one, in those days, in that culture, life was meaningless. A king, like here, Ahasuerus, if he wouldn't extend the scepter to Esther, his own queen, his wife, off with her head. So life was of no value. They thought nothing of killing people. It was no big deal to kill somebody.
I don't know, but when let's say Ahasuerus thinks about what to do with Vashti, there's a lot of deliberation there. He consults with people, what should I do? It's not so simple to him to just kill someone. I think we can, I didn't want to, there's a parish, a commentary called the Or HaChaim to Megillas Esther. He has something called Rishon LeZion, that's his commentary. He actually says that the reason why Mordecai originally wouldn't bow, and it reads very nicely into the verses, is because he tells everybody else, all the other people that are asking him, why aren't you bowing? He said, listen, I'm a Jew. Jews don't bow down to idols, which this guy has on his neck or in his clothing or wherever, and I don't think the king's decrees apply to me. It goes against my religious freedom. That's something that I wouldn't imagine a claim someone making in those days. But that's what the Or HaChaim says. It actually reads very nicely into the verses. But we should think that the government here is a little bit more sophisticated than we might think. There's absolute power, but they are very mindful of what it looks like when they, just use that absolute power without any kind of deliberation.
I guess another thing we can apply to it, and in a way, is a similar idea with Pharaoh and Moshe, because Pharaoh could do the same thing to Moshe.
I always wondered that when I read the Chumash. How come nobody just takes out Moshe?
But there and here is, again, we have two powers fighting who more powerful, with the Pharaoh saying, yeah, I can take him out. But that will just show them that, I got somebody on the road, they just get out, so it doesn't show me as because the Pharaoh pretends I'm a god. Mm-hmm. So as a God, I have to fight what he's saying, not just killing him, because everybody thinks, what kind of God I am? If somebody comes claim, instead of proving him wrong, I just kill. Uh-huh. Here is the same situation in a way with Haman, who is claiming he is the man in the Gavoi. He's the, after the, pretty much idea with the Yosef as well in a power. Like Yosef is the king and the Pharaoh just a figure. Here he's playing the role that Ahasuerus in a way just a political, public figure, and I am the ruler of the whole Persian Empire.
He's
so for me as a ruler, just to take him off doesn't make any sense.
It's
Let
beneath
me do
him.
something.
He wants to do it, but it's beneath him.
But for his image.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay, so just getting a little bit of a perspective on where Haman's coming from. I wanted to do that before. Now, coming back to the point of the story that we're in. Okay, so Ahasuerus gets up, he leaves the room, he goes for a walk. Worst timing ever to do that. What do you imagine Haman telling Esther at that time? We don't know what actually happens in that room for those few minutes. But Rabbi Foreman, I'll just quote his exact words. He
probably, oh God, I didn't know you were Jewish.
He writes a great script. Well, let me read to you what he got here. He says, "Oh, Esther, I can't believe it. You were a Jew all this time? What an incredible misunderstanding. Imagine our very own queen was one of those poor disheveled refugees from Palestine. It's amazing, even a little quaint, and only in Persia rags to riches story. Please, Esther, this whole idea that I was somehow out to get you, that you were ever personally endangered by me, it's so overblown. I never knew about your secret identity. None of us knew. How could we? And if we did, of course we would have spared you. You know, Esther, to be perfectly frank, I do think you need to take at least some responsibility for the miscommunication here. After all, Esther, it's not like you were so very upfront with the fact that you were a Jew this whole time. Look, Esther, you're our queen. You're not like the rest of those lawbreakers, the Jews. In a minute, the king is going to walk back in. I'll explain the whole misunderstanding to him. I'm good at that. We'll let him know that no one was trying to hurt you. And as for your former compatriots, the Jews, well, what has to happen to them is certainly unfortunate, but sometimes the good of the empire demands painful sacrifices. Surely you, our queen, know that better than anyone. So please, Esther, let it go. Let the wheels of justice turn. And whatever you do, please don't cast your lot in with those miserable refugees and their pitiful national aspirations. I'm saying this for your own sake, Esther. After all, you are Mother Persia. You don't want the king to start thinking, whose queen is she? Ours or theirs? So if you're Esther, how uncomfortable do you feel like at that moment? Incredibly. We have no idea what this conversation was, but if you actually think about what the dynamics of what's going on here, how many flaws there are in Esther's argument, there's a lot. There's a lot that Ahasuerus might be thinking about while he's going on this little walk. There's a lot that Haman's thinking about when he's planning his, retorts when Ahasuerus comes back into the room.
But I have issue with that full conversation. Mm-hmm. To go back a little bit, we are now talking about the second feast, right? Mm-hmm. Not the first.
This is after the accusation's been made.
Yes, but what just happened before that feast? It's a very interesting conversation between Haman and Haman's wife. So if Haman has that what his wife just told him before he'd been taken,
what does his wife tell him?
She just told him that about the Jews, that either you will win or they will win. And this one, he comes after the Mordecai's, the whole procession with the Mordecai, and where he basically losing his daughter and everything, and he's embarrassed, and that's why he's building the gal, or I don't remember. If
but after all this is over, what does he do? He dusts himself off and says, now it's time to go to my royal feast.
Yes, but she's telling him that if Mordecai is already over you, if he's already in that position where you below him, you're done. She's telling him that the Jews, it's either you or them.
So you think at this point Haman may have already given up? He's so overwhelmed, despite the flaws in Esther's logic.
He's not given up, but he, in more, I would say, protective, defending mode than attacking mode.
Okay. And his best defense is probably a great offense right now, I imagine. And
he's like the best in my personal experience. Usually, the best defense is attack, and
so that's what he would be doing here.
But he cannot. His defensive mode is not ready for the like.
And this isn't really an offense, right? He's not going after Esther, at least not now.
He's really like trying to build a tower to protect himself instead of thinking, how can I counterattack and really...
But he's trying to neutralize Esther, saying, listen, yeah, you're a Jew, fine, great, you're exempt. You're the queen. Of course you're exempt. But listen, don't put your lot in with the rest of the Jewish people. He's trying to separate the two, which Esther was trying to specifically avoid. Mm-hmm.
But she's begging for mercy for her people, in a sense. So how could he think that argument would work? That he's saying, "Oh, come on, you don't want to join."
Because again, how does she pose it? Because she doesn't want to show any affiliation. She says, and she's hoping Achashverosh doesn't think,
my people.
I'm going to die because there's a decree against my people,
mm-hmm.
right? So Haman has a very easy job: separate Esther from the rest of the Jewish people. Achashverosh, your wife is fine; she's safe. Now kill the rest of the Jews. That's all he has to do. Right? Esther, how does Esther couch her argument? Save me by getting rid of this horrible decree. It doesn't have to be that way. Right? So, Haman has a pretty good claim. He does. And if you take a look at what happens, Esther, I don't know if we would call this luck, strategy, to whatever extent she planned this, is debatable. But take a look at chapter 7, verse 8. This is when the king walks back in after his walk. When the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet room, Haman was prostrated on the couch upon which Esther was. You imagine the scene. Before Achashverosh walks back in, Haman is having this whole speech, perhaps, trying to get close to her, trying to appeal to her. And what happens? So the king exclaimed, "Would he actually assault the queen while I'm in the house?" As soon as the king uttered this, they covered Haman's face. It was a game over for him. Right? For whatever reason, Achashverosh thinks that Haman is now out to kill Esther. We could suggest that a reason why this happened was because of the tension, because of the momentum Esther built prior to the feast. Right? What did she do before? She said, or she made it look like, at least, Achashverosh was, that Haman was perhaps having a fling with her, or that they were interested in each other, or worse, that they were trying to take over the throne together. That causes the harboring of some feelings towards Haman that are very much negative. Now at this point in time, really that makes no sense to think anymore. Right? That there's something between the two of them. Esther just accused Haman of trying to kill her. Right? But our emotions don't work that way. Right? Especially when there is a connection that our emotions could make of, earlier Achashverosh is thinking, this guy's trying to take my wife away from me. And now it changes into, this guy's trying to take my wife away from me, in a very different way. But our emotions work in a way that what Esther was looking for, and she was hoping to create without the walk, this heat of the moment decision, so that ended up being created through the fact that Haman was on Esther's bed. It caused a certain imagery, a certain light bulb to flick off in Achashverosh's mind, one that made no sense. But emotionally, that's what was going on. All of a sudden, they put a bag on Haman's head, and it's over for him. He doesn't even get a chance to advance his arguments towards Achashverosh. If you take a look more carefully in the verse, I'm not sure if the Art Scroll English actually brings this out as well. Let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, if you take a look, the English doesn't bring this out. Look again at chapter 7, verse 8. I'll read this in Hebrew. The king, Achashverosh, he returns back into the house from his trip in the garden. Haman was prostrated on the bed, Asher Esther aleh, the bed that Esther was on. Vayomer HaMelech, and the king said, Hagam lechboshes hamalka imi babayis. He even wants to conquer my queen in my house. Hadavar yotza mipi HaMelech. These words came out of Achashverosh's mouth. Ufnei Haman chafu, and then they covered Haman's head. The words came out of the king's mouth. Where else do words come out of? Nowhere. Why would you bother mentioning this in the Megillah? If not to indicate some kind of heat of the moment. It just slipped. It just came out. There was an emotional reaction that he really didn't think through at all. But lo and behold, it happened because of the seeds that Esther planted beforehand. Haman doesn't even have a chance to get a word in, when all of a sudden this bag is put on his head and he's a goner. After that, we have a kind of a bonus, an icing on the cake. This is not something Esther planned either. But Charvona comes in and he says, and by the way, king, you know what Haman did yesterday? He made this gigantic gallows for Mordecai. What does that do? By the way, Mordecai, Charvona says, Mordecai, you know that Jew that saved your life years ago? That's the guy that Haman wanted to kill. The Jew, Mordecai the Jew. What does that do? How does that make Haman look?
Not good.
Why? Besides the fact that Mordecai is somebody that saved the king's life.
Well,
I think more than that.
It makes Haman look like the enemy, because he's pointed fingers at the supposed enemy who actually isn't the enemy, right? They're actually trying to help Achashverosh, and now now he's pointing fingers at the wrong person again.
Keep in mind, what did we say earlier was the motive for Haman having this whole plan to kill the Jewish people?
Mordecai was his motive.
So his claims to Achashverosh months ago about those horrible Jews and their evil plan to take over the world, they're exposed at this point. What's this all about? It's about Mordecai. And when Achashverosh sees that, then the icing is on the cake. It's done. Haman is irredeemably lost. So that's the end of the party. Game over, happy ending, right? No?
Almost.
Not so fast?
No.
Why not?
We have to get rid of the
Jews
decree.
still had to fight the
Because you
Persians.
cannot,
Right.
You cannot remove the decree.
Keep in mind, again, what was Esther's plan? What did she want to happen here? She wanted Achashverosh to think, save me, how?
Come save my people.
How do you say, she didn't want to say save my people. She didn't want to attach herself to them just yet.
Right.
How did she say to save me? Save me by getting rid of that horrible decree. Chapter 7, verse 10. So they hang Haman on the gallows which he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger abated. The king was fine now. What is he fine with?
Haman is gone.
Haman's gone. Is Esther safe?
Yeah.
Are the Jewish people saved?
No.
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 But he doesn't care.
He took the route that Esther was hoping he wouldn't take. She saved him by making him an exception, not by making her a part of the Jewish people, get rid of that horrible decree. So really, the battle's not even close to over. I imagine if I was making a Megillas Esther movie, I think, by the way, this book would serve as a great script. So Haman's plea. I imagine Haman laughing his way to the gallows. You think you've won? You haven't won. In just a few months, you're all goners, and there's a decree that you can't repeal. And he's laughing maniacally as they hang him. What do you do now? What does Esther do now? What does Mordecai do now? What would you do now? That's the theme of this class. What would you do? You gotta ignore what we know happens. What solution would you possibly have? It's hard. We have that. Oh, I would do what they do, of course. They won. It worked out great.
As the king.
As
the king, that's the only chance she has.
Ask the king, and that's essentially what they do.
Yes, as the king.
How does the king respond?
Not parable.
So first of all, we have to point out, before we even get to the... So, maybe not. We'll see about that. But before you get into that, realize that now, what does Esther have to do that she didn't have to do before?
To reveal herself.
She has to now actually show an affiliation. Before you could paint Haman as the straw man, it's about getting rid of him, that guy. He's her foil.
Right.
But now, he's out of the picture, and she's safe. The only way to save her people now is to actually affiliate with them. Take a look at chapter 8, verse 3. Esther yet again spoke to the king, collapsed at his feet, and cried and begged him to avert the evil intention of Haman the Agagi, and his scheme which he had plotted against the Jews. The king extended a golden scepter to Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the king. She said, if it pleases the king, and if I have won his favor, and the proposal seems proper in the king's opinion, and I be pleasing to him, it's a lot of buttering up here, let a decree be written to countermand those dispatches devised by Haman the son of Hamdasa the Agagi, which he wrote ordering the destruction of the Jews who are in the king's provinces. She's asking, help us out. Right? Notice how Esther's crying right now. Why didn't she cry before? Why is she all of a sudden crying now, getting so emotional?
Because that's the only way it's left for her to save the people.
She tried saving them before, she didn't cry.
Well, before she was not affiliated to anybody.
Exactly. This is the first time Esther's really putting herself on the line.
She's
right?
on the line.
We think of the climax being chapter 7. Right? When she points out Haman, it was him, and then off with his head and it's over. This is really the climax. This is where the moment of truth for Esther. And I think very often we think after chapter 7 the game is over. It's done. We realize Esther crying right now. Why is she crying? Isn't it over? The bad guy's dead. He's dead, but the decree isn't. Why is she crying? There is a very serious situation now, even more so than before, and now she actually has to cast her lot with the Jewish people. She has to give up that image that Achashverosh had of her, that made her so endearing to him. That's a big deal for her. That's why she's crying. So now she's actually asking for a personal favor. The response, so we mentioned earlier, might not be so great. Sounds good. Let's take a look at it carefully. So you have chapter 8, verse 7. Then King Achashverosh said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, okay, behold, I have given Haman's estate to Esther, and he has been hanged on the gallows because he plotted against the Jews. If you ended here, or let's say you'd complete the sentence, how would you complete it? What does it sound like Achashverosh is getting at right now? Before verse 8. Don't read verse 8. Just verse 7.
He's kind of saved the queen, he saved the Mordecai, so he gave, I give you money, I made you rich, what else you want?
Right. Yeah. The king's anger abated after Haman was killed. I'm happy. Why can't you be happy?
I have a question here. Where is the Mordecai came from? It was queen, and now it's a queen and Mordecai.
I think it comes from Charvona. When Charvona points out earlier, right after Haman gets accused, that Haman was trying to kill somebody who actually saved the king's life in the past. Achashverosh is now looking for a second man in command.
Oh, this was all the same evening?
This
was all the same evening, not
the very day.
This next part, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Once you get to chapter 8, it might have been happening sometime after.
That very day?
Yeah, I don't know if it was that very day.
Okay.
It might have been a little bit. I imagine maybe there's some thought that Esther had to give to what her approach would be.
But in this case, what you're explaining, if he's looking for a second in command, and he thinks that the Mordecai is the right man because he saved his life,
we should remember Mordecai is also a high-ranking official even before this.
It may make sense for queen to appeal and cry, but it's also he has now power to appeal himself. He doesn't need Esther anymore. He can say, well, I cannot be your second in command because you're about to destroy me and my people. Because at that point, Achashverosh knows that Mordecai is a Jew. It's not wasting time.
Is Mordecai in a position at this point to ask favors?
Not yet.
I think Esther is still the wife, right? I don't know if Mordecai is quite yet. He just got promoted. It's not the best time to ask the boss for the world.
Yeah, but he still did save his life. I mean, he's got some
he got his parade. He's
got some points there.
Let's put it that way. He's not yet promoted. He's offered a promotion.
He takes it. He does take it. He takes the job, and he's going to do something with it soon. We'll see. But to start off, verse 7 is just Achashverosh saying, listen, I've given you Haman's house. I killed him. What more do you want? Now when you get to verse 8, I'm going to read the Hebrew because the English is not going to pick up on something very crucial here. And now concerning you guys, you Esther Mordecai, Kisva Yehudim Katov Einechem. Write for the Jews what is good in your eyes. B'Shem HaMelech, you could even write it in my name. V'chisnu b'tabas HaMelech, and seal it with the king's ring. Ki kesav asher nichtav b'Shem HaMelech v'nachtom b'tabas HaMelech ein lahashiv. The word ki I'm going to translate here probably as Art Scroll does first, because the writing that is written in my name, sealed with my seal, it cannot be rescinded. Right? It sounds good at first. Take this ring. It's going to give you the ability to do whatever you want to do. But the word ki in Hebrew doesn't always mean because. Sometimes it could also mean but. If I read it that way, here's how it translates. But writing that was written with the king's writing, with his seal, it cannot be rescinded. What does it mean now?
Exactly what he's saying.
What is he saying?
That's exactly what he's saying. That sorry,
I can't cancel.
I can't help you. You can write whatever you want, but I can't do anything to repeal the previous decree. There's this whole double meaning there with that word ki. It's very, very crucial. And if you take a look at verse 7, what does Achashverosh seem to be saying? I've done what I can. What more do you want me to do? Whether or not he actually could or couldn't do anything is besides the point. He's not doing anything else.
Why doesn't it come out the same way in the English?
So the word ki has a double. It could mean one of two things. So the more I think
common.
I think the more common translation would be
because.
For, because.
Right.
Okay? The word but I think is crucial here. There's a lot of double meanings in this Megillah. We could talk about that some other time. I have a theory about why that is. But Achashverosh gives them everything and nothing at the same time. Right? Whatever he wants to do is irrelevant. He's not doing it for them, whether he can't or won't. So now, what do Esther and Mordecai do? Again, what would you do? Ignore what you know they do. I would have given up. I have no idea.
You have to be clever and write something, knowing that the other people are going to rise up against the Jews on that appointed day.
Right.
So you have to be clever and write something that will either I don't know, cause them not to, or something to help them?
I guess in this case, I would ask, one of the points exactly what they asked to defend it, another point to move, to leave the kingdom, something like that, because they cannot give up. If they give up, they're dead. They're dead anyway. So if they give up, they're dead, and they have to do something. They actually, as they say, they push to the wall, and they have no left, right, or center.
I used to always ask myself the question of,
yeah, they have
defend yourself. That's what it sounds like gets done in the end of the day.
Or
they wouldn't have done that without this?
I mean, he is the biggest ruler, but probably, well, not probably at that time for sure, he's not the only ruler in the world. The Greece at that time is quite strong, because if you look on the history, he just lost the war to Greece. And he lost the Greece, and that's where the Sparta comes in place. He's actually the one.
Some say that's why he closed himself in. He wouldn't talk to anybody besides Haman. He stayed in his chambers. If you wanted to go see him, you better have been invited.
Yeah, so he just lost, as we know from the Midrash, from 127 he had more. He was quite a big amount.
So what would you do with that information?
They have ability, if I would be them, and being Jewish, knowing that we always move, I guess I would ask, okay, you cannot remove the degree, but the degree applies in your kingdom. Let us go. Let us all leave the kingdom.
Let us get out of here.
Yeah, let us get out of here.
Okay.
Let us leave the kingdom.
You've got a few months. I don't know. Moving a whole population that easily in those days. Not a simple matter.
We moved in 1 day from Egypt. So the Jews went, and from Spain it was 48 hours.
But that was all in one place. Aren't they dispersed here?
It doesn't matter.
Dispersed here.
Even a few months.
We should all be in Israel right now.
To send the messengers that, guys, we have to get out of here because we're about to be, and they know they're about to be killed.
Yeah, they know that.
So they just send the messengers, we're allowed to get out.
Okay.
And I can guarantee you that the Jewish way of distributing the message will be faster even at that time than any, horsemen and everything.
Do you think the enemies of the Jewish people would let that happen even?
But who would take that?
That's another question.
That they would accept.
But at least they have ability,
would take
right?
that.
I mean, okay, I would say they probably would. It depends. Actually, it depends. Knowing Jews, and when you're fighting for your life, again, they can say, you know what, take all my possessions, just leave me alone. I'm leaving. Take it off. And it actually happens in Russia in a century ago, so quite a lot. So maybe they will. Maybe they just said, just take it, it's all yours, bye-bye, I'm gone. Actually, one of the biggest reasons why you don't see until the land of Israel being conquered, any Jews being farmers, is because of that. Mostly why you see a lot of Jews in the jewelry business, in the gold business, in something that you can take with you small in the pockets and run in a minute.
Interesting.
That's why we were. That's why we were jewelers, goldmen, and you don't see us as farmers until we got a backland of Israel. Not much. I mean, in Russia it was some farmers, but it was mostly for close community to survive. But mostly it was somebody always in a community who were like somebody rich, but also had that movable richness that could grab it, and international. Like, I mean, today we have international currency. 150 years ago, only gold or diamonds are international currency. You come with your rubles to, to England 200 years ago, not many people.
Okay, so we have another possible solution. I feel like it'd be easier said than done, personally. But okay, let's see what they actually did.
It's a possible solution.
Let's see what else. I mean, when you're faced with your life on the line, so maybe that is a possibility.
We escaped so many times, so many places that.
Okay. That would be a much worse ending. I don't think we'd have such a celebration of this holiday if that was what we had done. But let's see what happens.
You said to sing.
Esther and Mordecai, they make a very bold move. And the move that they make is a key to understanding what they're doing, what they're trying to do. Rabbi Foreman says is you have to understand the dynamics of pogroms. He points out that far more than who's stronger between the two combatants involved, Jews versus non-Jews, what's really crucial about whether or not a pogrom will go one way or the other is what is the attitude of the authorities in that location.
Yeah.
When they're going to destroy your homes, your towns, and they're going to kill you, are the police just going to stand along the sideline or perhaps even encourage it? Or are they actually going to step in and defend you?
Yes,
that is crucial.
They never stepped in and defend you, but they've been bought where they, like I know as a fact from my great-grandfather, and passed to me and grandfather.
Right, you can maybe bribe one official here or there to help out yourself out.
They bribed it. When the order came that you have to do the pogrom, they said, well, sorry, choose the guy, choose one of the drunken, that you're going to get drunk and beaten up because he has out there. You know, Russians anyway, we have to beat him up and put in jail.
So to save yourself on an individual level, you could maybe buy somebody off.
And
right?
shows the houses that we can damage or destroy, so we report here destroyed houses.
In any event, right. But then, however you slice it, a pogrom still happens, right? The way to actually win this war is to have public opinion, particularly that of the government officials, on your side. That's what's crucial. They would have defended themselves anyways. They just wouldn't have been successful. That's not the way these things work. So what do Esther and Mordechai actually do? They introduce confusion with a counter decree. Right? That's the first step. Take a look at chapter 8, verse 11. To the effect that the king had, so they send a letter, and they're continuing, it's kind of a run-on sentence, but jump in the middle of verse 11, to the effect that the king had permitted the Jews of every single city to organize and defend themselves, to destroy, slay, and exterminate every armed force of any people or province that threatened them, along with their children and women, and to plunder their possessions.
It's interesting that they like the children part.
Right, why do you think that sounds interesting? It's not very Jewish.
No.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, I get way back. Who's the Amalek? They were ordered to kill everybody, including the children. And there's
Amalek. You
could argue in some way maybe we're kind of up against an Amalek here, but really up against your average Persian citizen that wants us dead, whether he's a member of Amalek or not. This sounds very savage, right? And I would tell you even more. If this is about Amalek, I have another difficulty, because anytime we were instructed to go to war with Amalek, one of the primary rules was you don't take spoils of war. You don't do it. So what's Mordechai doing right now? Writing a decree that sounds very savage on the one hand, and also asks for taking the spoils. Why does he do that?
Possessions means take the spoils or don't take
plunder.
So don't take. The decree says
destroy.
Take everything. Okay. It might make it
not burn down.
Not take it. Plunder. Take it for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. Pirates like to plunder. Alright. They like to steal stuff. They don't care to just burn it down. It might make you feel a little better, but it makes the question a little stronger. Is that if you look in chapter 9, verse 5, we start talking about what actually happened in the war. And the Jews struck at all of their enemies with the sword, slaughtering and annihilating. They treated their enemies as they pleased. Okay, no mention of women or children there. You could argue maybe they're included in that term, whatever it might be, though. I would argue children are not part of enemies of the Jewish people. In Shushan, the capital, the Jews slew and annihilated 500 men, including, I won't read all this, but Haman's sons, that I can't pronounce their names properly, probably. Sons of Haman, sons of Hamadasa, the Jews' enemy, but they did not lay their hand on the spoils. We didn't take a thing.
A few times.
Right. Why? Because perhaps we're going up against Amalek, but then that just makes the question stronger. Why does the decree that Mordechai sends out talk about taking spoils, about killing women and children? Why so savage? So take a look now.
To fear, to put fear into people.
More than just fear. Take a look at, we have to go back in time a little bit. Chapter 3 now, verse 13. This is Haman's decree, page 1255.
Maybe because they were going to kill the Jewish children, innocent Jewish
exactly.
children.
This is Haman's decree. Letters were sent by courier to all the king's provinces to destroy, to slay, and to exterminate all Jews, young and old, children and women, in a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions.
It's decree against decree.
Right.
It's got to be equal.
You can't take back the decree that was made, that very decree. The only thing you could do is confuse all the government officials in the states that are plotting right now to kill the Jews. You have to send another decree that is just as forceful, if you want to indicate in any way that sympathies of the government now lie with the Jews. Right? So does Mordechai actually mean all of these things he's saying? No. But what it represents, that he's able to say that and able to give the Jews permission to do these things, that's a big deal.
But I have a question, because they make a point of saying 127 to each province in its own script, and each people in its own language, and to the Jews in their own script and language. I wonder if he said something different to them.
There is an approach to that the Malbim brings, that he claims that the Jews had no idea what was going on. Everybody else was privy to it, but the Jews weren't.
No, my point was maybe in their decree, he said something a little different because nobody else understood their language.
You guys are going to be fine.
Well, no, not that. That don't take the spoils, don't kill the children. Like, you know what I'm saying? He was harsh in every other language, but in our own language, he said something a little soft.
That we wouldn't be as nervous? With the goal that we wouldn't be as nervous? Oh, you mean, sorry, you're talking about Mordechai sending the decree to us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, who did you think I was
I thought you were talking about Haman sending a decree
Not
to
to Haman, no, sorry, Mordechai.
No,
That's possible. It might be, by the way, Jews, secret message. I'm just bluffing.
He's just
right
trying
now.
to scare everybody.
Don't actually do any of this. It seems like the Jews knew for one reason or another that they weren't actually meant to carry all this harsh stuff out. What were they thinking? What were they trying to do? They were trying to confuse the government. They were trying to confuse the high-ranking officials in the various provinces who have one decree on the one hand from Haman that is very harsh, and now they have this new decree. If this new decree had been lighter in the slightest, you got both in your hand, which one would you go with? The stronger one, for sure.
Wouldn't you go in order? No.
The newer one wins?
Well, no, we got this first one, and it's signed by with the king's ring, and we know
so
once the king issues something, it can't be revoked. So what's this thing coming along? The first one carries the weight.
The first one carries the weight?
Yeah, because it can't be revoked.
I would at least be confused. I don't know. The later one maybe has more authority. It's the latest opinion of the king. I don't know. But in any event, if the language had been any lighter, and you had a government official trying to figure out which one is the king's real intention, you would go with the first one. Mordecai had to be as harsh as the first one in order to give himself a fighting chance. But even then, what do you have? You got 50-50. Who's going to win? I don't know. But if you're a prince, which one do you go with when you're trying to figure out your state's policy? So Mordecai and Esther, they have to do a little bit more to up the ante a little bit.
So do you think because of that second decree, which was confusing, there wasn't an organized uprising against the Jews?
There still was.
And the Jews were, and because of what Mordecai and Esther sent out, maybe now the Jews were able to openly organize and maybe set up weapons depots, arsenals, or organize.
So that's a possibility one.
Like,
I'd say number two also, like we said, the position of the government is crucial here.
Yeah. Like before, you had to do it in secret, and maybe you were terrified and you didn't know how.
And even then, it's just a fair fight. It's a war. I'd still be scared and stiff,
Yes, but I mean, now maybe now that you have the second decree, you can openly organize and.
So that's a possibility. I would say that definitely gives them the right to do that more than just batting down the hatches and planning for maybe some personal form of self-defense. But Mordecai and Esther, they do something more now. Now, pay no attention to the context in which I'm bringing this up. You have chapter 8, verse 15. Mordecai left the king's presence clad in royal apparel of turquoise and white with a large golden crown and a robe of fine linen and purple. Then the city of Shushan was cheerful and glad. We say this out loud during the Megillah reading. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. We say that in Havdalah. Likewise in every province and in every city wherever the king's command and his decree reached, the Jews had gladness and joy, a feast and a holiday. Moreover, many from among the people of the land professed themselves Jews, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. If I was to ask you, when does this take place? What do you think? What point of the story?
After the battles occurred and the Jews won.
The problem is it's not.
Right.
It's before the battles.
Right.
What are the Jews thinking? You should be preparing for war now. What are you doing having a parade? You haven't won a thing.
Oh, that's the smartest move.
Why?
Because when you do the parade, you don't see my real power, but you see show of power.
Right.
And you're like, oh, these guys have a power, they're organized, they're ready to rebel.
And the king is on their side. Look, who's in their second in command?
That's right.
Mordecai the Jew.
Yeah.
Mordecai the Jew, second in command.
Now I'm not sure I want to join the forces. Even I said before I will, maybe I won't.
If I'm a government official before and I'm 50-50 because I got these two decrees, which one am I starting to lean more towards now? Number two. The king's on the side of the Jews. That's very clear from his actions, from his behavior, from what Mordecai is able to do right now. And you have people freaking out. Everybody's getting afraid. Some people are, it sounds like from the verse that they're pretending to be Jewish. We played a good bluff game. We did good PR. And that was really what was going on here. And that ultimately was making the biggest difference in the world. Again, what are the dynamics of a pogrom? Whoever the government is on the side of, that's really going to determine the direction that things are going to take. And it worked out for us very well. Thank God. The war ended up being very successful in our end. But then, there's one more thing that we should just finish up with, just one last element of the story. You know that we celebrate Shushan Purim. Why?
because the flood waters
with the walled
were
city
in
or something. I don't know.
So in Shushan, there was one more day where Esther says, you know what? This is chapter 9, verse 13. Esther says, if it pleases His Majesty, allow the Jews who are in Shushan to act tomorrow as they did today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. Esther's doing another important thing. Again, if this is all about PR, what happens if Achashverosh is very upset about the numbers, and it sounds like that from the verses, he's very upset about the numbers that he's getting. Lots of Persians killed by Jews today. And all of a sudden he sends out a notice, Jews, quit it. Quit the shenanigans. What would happen then to this whole PR game that we played? It would crumble. And then our enemies would just regroup, they'd come back to get us. Esther understands that, and she tells Achashverosh, listen, don't tell them stop and desist immediately. Couch it in slightly different terms. Jews, you got one more day. And more than that, Achashverosh, please, let us hang the 10 sons of Haman. The 10 sons of Haman, if you notice from the first day of the battle, they're dead already. They've been killed.
Yeah.
You're hanging dead people.
Right.
Why are you hanging dead people?
To make a point.
Show, demonstrate.
We want to make a demonstration. We want to show where did the loyalties lie of the Persian people right now, or of the Persian government, of Achashverosh. This is all a statement. You're not trying to kill them. They're dead already. This is all about showing where Achashverosh's favor lies. And it might not even be true, but it makes the rest of the world think that it's about the Jews. It's with the Jews. So not only do we have the first day of being very successful in battle, that bluff, those seeds being planted in the world, perhaps where they start wondering, why does everyone think Jews run the world? It might be because of wheeling and dealing like this. Being able to bluff and making it look like we're more than we are, that's really what carried the Jews through the day. I would argue, besides the political genius you see here in this entire story, is the whole idea of costumes in Purim. Where do you think that comes from? I think a lot of the elements in the story that we just discussed are very central to it. Esther hiding her identity and that being a crucial part of the story. And the Jews' success being so much about presenting themselves as something that they're not. So it's what carries the day. It really it touches on the essence of Purim. I think that might be a little bit of an insight as to why we do all the costumes, all the pretending and all of that. So that's part one of this book, talking about exactly what happens, how to make sense of this story in a logical way. I would say if we wanted to learn a lesson from it, just to close, is that besides the political genius involved, besides the various lessons we could learn from how to deal with government, as Esther and Mordechai masterfully do, there's also the idea, and this is, again, we talked about earlier, what is the climax of this story? It's not so much when Esther points out at Haman and says, this guy's trying to kill the Jewish people, get rid of him. She doesn't cry then. There's no danger at that moment. The danger is when Esther has to actually fess up. Esther has a value that I think the Jewish people in general should have. We want to avoid conflict between our loyalties to the Jewish people and our home nation as much as possible. And that's what she does. But when our backs are up against the wall, we actually do have to declare our loyalties. And it's uncomfortable and it's hard for us. We do have to do what Esther did. We have to actually say, I'm a Jew. And I have to say I have a personal connection to these people, and I'm looking out for them. We have a shared mission, and because of that, I think it's important to do the right thing. Achashverosh, I think, as a whole, we can understand that message also as standing up for our fellow Jew, even when it's not necessarily the safest thing for us to do. I think that's the message. That's ultimately the heroism of Esther, that she steps up when she absolutely needs to. And with that, I hope you have a fair confirm. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully gives you a little bit more of an insight to reading Megillas Esther this year. Thank you very much.